Alright, just a quick little heads up before the video starts, just to let you guys know just a little bit about me. I am not good with water. I'm going to play all the decks in the format just so that I have an understanding of what they all do, but this one is just not one I'm very skilled with. But I did see a very interesting build, which is a Mass Chameleon within a Mermail deck, and I just kind of tweaked it to my liking. So he ends up going first, and summons Lila. Just mills off pretty decently. I realize now it's Chaos Dragons, and I try to make a very aggressive push for the beginning of the game. I end up getting Gunned and Marksman, and just drop everything that I can onto the field, and end up using the Leads effect to discard a card out of his hand, which ends up being Bus, which is the worst possible thing for the situation, and I end up making a Draco sack, just getting 2 tokens, setting 2 back row, and he ends up going Tefnuit into Malicious, which ends up getting him an Exceed. And with those two, he ends up going into a Gauntlet Launcher, which I haven't really seen before, and I was just like, okay, that's kind of cool, but then he drops Dad, and I'm just like, oh shit, this game just got real. So I end up sphering into a Pike, and then the Marksman to get the Undine. And then it goes Gaia Charger and attacks over, deals a lot of damage, and I'm just like, darn. So I go Undine, try to hit out the Dark Arm before it can deal more damage, and set another Sphere. He goes Shrine and then banishes my Undine with his Gas Sorcerer, summons another Malicious from the deck, and makes an M7, gets the Light Pulse I sent to the graveyard with Shrine, and I'm kind of in a pickle here. Just kind of Sphere to stay alive, and then I go for what I think was probably the best play, in my opinion. My idea was to go into Bahamut Shark and then crash the Abyss straight into the Light Pulsar, and then from there I would summon Abyss Lead from the graveyard and then attack over the Gaia Dragon and set the Lind, but that doesn't really end up working because he has Honest, and I just kind of lose immediately. As for siding in this matchup, I decided to take out all the MSTs and a Marksman for Lightmirror's Blackhorn and a Penguin Soldier, just so that I can do some things instead of having back row removal that doesn't work. I summoned Undine, drop the Dragoons, and then get a Megalo to my hand. So that sets up my Mass Chameleon that I have in my hand. I opened really strong this game, but he allures, I just Blackhorn whatever he does. And I decided to make a safer play so that my next play would be a little bit more set up, and I make Engineer. So he just draws and passes, which is fine. I summon the Mass Chameleon and end up going into Abyss Dweller, and attack in for 18. He drops Triag by Phoenix Wing Wind Blasted, and he obviously doesn't have anything left, so it just kind of scoops it up. Don't change anything with my side deck, and he ends up going first. My hand is pretty dreadful, but I'm going to just have to work with it. He goes to Tour Guide, Bosses, and then goes into Fortune Tune, which I'm not really that able to get around. So I end up dropping Tidal into the yard with my Undine because dropping anything else would be negative. I don't want to attack into it because his Bus could get rid of my Tidal, which would probably be the worst case scenario. He ends up exceeding here into Bouncer, which is a really big threat, and I don't have an out to it right now. But fortunately I top deck the Lind, and that ends up giving me a little bit of time to set up. He goes into Leviathan Dragon and attacks over. I get into my lead, so I'm a little bit safe for now, but right now I just want to establish a Gaios so he can't really get me with any of his tricks. So there's that. I end up setting the Jax controller just so I don't have to discard. He goes and searches for Tefnuit, which is fine. And here he drops like Pulsar and then drops a Plague. He ends up Synchro Summoning into Stardust Spark and attacks over my controller, which is fine. I top deck Spike, which was so clutch. I debate dropping Heavy Infantry, but I end up searching for the Megalo, which is a much better play. And here I drop Megalo, which ends up starting a really ugly chain. So this is going to call for one of those special situations called, wait for it, there we go, Ian's Illustrations. And right now we have a very serious chain going on here. Better way to explain chains with post-it notes. So first we have Chain Link 1, which is infantry, which targets the Strike Bouncer. It has to be Chain Link 1 because it's mandatory. Chain Link 2 is Gun, but there's a problem here, and I'll explain that in just a little bit. Chain Link 3 is Megalo, which is going to search for the Abyss Sphere. But this allows my opponent to chain his Strike Bouncer, which will be chain link 4, to negate my Megalo. But here I'm allowed to chain with Gaios, detach for cost my Vis Lead, and turn off all effects on the field. But then this will allow him to chain his Stardust Spark Dragon to target his Photon Strike Bouncer. So all effects are on the chain and now it resolves backwards, with Stardust Spark Dragon in before Gaios protecting Strike Bouncer, Gaios turning off all my opponent's effects, Strike Bouncer trying to activate its effect, but then because of Gaios, unfortunately Strike Bouncer becomes a sad panda. Which then will mean that my Gaios is allowed to activate freely, which is pretty freaking awesome, and then my Gund grabs the Abyss Lead from the graveyard, and then mandatory heavy infantry effect, which will try to destroy the Photon Strike Bouncer, but it can't, because Star Spark Dragon is protecting it. However, Abyss Gun can't really activate its effect because there weren't any Mermails in the graveyard when its effect activated, so this makes the rest of the duel kind of irrelevant because I activate its effect illegally. So I'm just going to show the rest of this duel to you guys and just not really narrate the rest. It's kind of self-explanatory what happens, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video nonetheless and learned a little bit about chains and the Mermail deck, which is kind of cool. Simultaneous effects on chains is pretty interesting and a little bit hard for newer players to understand. So, hope you guys enjoy, and this is Smashing Pumpkin signing out. Peace.